This is section 2.4. This is part 6. We just finished working angle problems. Now we're going to start consecutive integer problems. There are 3 different types we deal with. And the setup on them is really not that bad. First of all, what are consecutive integers? Integers are numbers that are positive and negative, but not fractions, not decimals. And consecutive means they are 1 apart. So 3 and 4 are consecutive integers. 11 and 12 are consecutive integers. Negative 34 and negative 33 are consecutive integers. Okay, every single time you see consecutive integers, you're going to set it up with your first value being x, that's your smaller number, and then your next bigger number would be x plus 1, the next biggest would be x plus 2, and so on. Most of the time, you're going to be asked to find 2 consecutive integers, so your smaller one is going to be x, your larger one is going to be x plus 1. It is possible that you have a problem where you're asked to find 3 consecutive integers, so your first would be x, the next is x plus 1, the next would be x plus 2. I guess it's technically possible that you have multiple ones, more than that. You're just not going to see them in this class. Okay, so keep that in mind. The next thing we can be asked to find are consecutive even integers. And that means that we'll be looking for something like 4 and 6. We skip over 5 because it's odd. We could also have 1,110 and then 1,112. They are consecutive even integers. Negative 56 and negative 54 are also consecutive even integers. If you look at just the examples I've given, these problems are also set up with x as your first one, but your next one is 2 apart. 4 plus 2 is 6. 1,110 plus 2 is 1,112. Negative 56 plus 2 is negative 54. These are always 2 apart. So if your first one is x, the next one is x plus 2. The next one would be 2 more than this one, which is x plus 4, and so on. Okay? Now, where a lot of people get mixed up is this one makes sense, this one makes sense, but consecutive odd integers, for some reason, also messes a lot of people up because these are also 2 apart. And there's something about these being an even number apart that just messes us up. But example of consecutive odd integers would be 3 and 5. And then 44,767 and 44,769 are also 2 apart. Negative 33, negative 31 are also 2 apart. Okay? So these have exactly the same setup. The only time you really want to worry about whether it says even or odd integers is at the very end when you go to check to see if your answer is reasonable. If the original problem says you should have even answers, you need to have even answers. If the original problem says you need odd answers, you need odd answers. Okay, so let's look at a couple of problems where we work with these. All right, so the first one. The sum of 2 consecutive check numbers is 357. Find the numbers. Okay, now I know most of you are too young to use checkbooks often, if at all. So let's talk about check numbers. At the upper right of a check, there is a number. In a checkbook, the numbers go in order. So if your first check number is 1,235, your next one would be 1,236, and the next would be 1,237, and so on. Sorry, I'm off the screen. Okay. Sum. Sum is an addition problem, right? It's the answer to an addition problem. And I want to add 2 consecutive check numbers, and I should get 357. So I take the smaller one plus the larger one, and that gives me the total. So let's talk about the setup. The smaller one, or you can think of it as the first number, depending on, how the problem is written. The smaller number is going to be x. Now these are consecutive check numbers. These are not consecutive odd check numbers. They're not consecutive even check numbers. These are always 1 apart. So your next one, or your larger one, would be x plus 1. And then if you had a third one, it would be x plus 2, and so on. Now, what is this telling me? I'm going to add these two check numbers together and get this. So I take my first check number, x, add my second check number, which is x plus 1, and that should give me 357. Okay? Now, again, the parentheses here are just to make it clear that I'm adding two check numbers. Mathematically, it means nothing. So I don't have anything to distribute. I can just drop the parentheses. Combine like terms here, remembering they are 1x's. 1x plus 1x would be 2x plus 1 equals 357. To solve for x, I need to move the 1 over to the right, so subtract 1 from each side. I get 2x equals 356. Now divide both sides by a 2. And I get that x must equal 178. Okay, so now let's see if we've answered the question. We're asked to find the numbers. We're asked to find both check numbers. I found x. X is the first check number. I also need this one. So I would do 178 plus 1 to give me 179. So my two check numbers are 178 and also 179. Now, are these reasonable? We got whole numbers, not decimals or fractions, so that's good. Also, check numbers are not negative. You can have consecutive negative integers, but they don't make sense in this real world. So I've got positive numbers. They are consecutive. It is easy to check that they add back up to 357. This is your answer.